In 1936, the U.S. Forest Service handed out a pamphlet teaching Depression-era families how to build a warm, dry shelter with nothing but a tarp, some rope, and the leaves under their feet. Today, that same setup outperforms a $400 tent. But here's the twist. Number 14 on this list was quietly dropped from military survival manuals, not because it failed, but because it worked too well with materials that cost nothing. And number 3, outdoor companies would rather you never learned it because it makes their flagship product look like a gimmick. These 25 tricks kept trappers, homesteaders, and mountain men alive through winters that would put a modern camper in the ground. Before we start, hit that subscribe button because what you're about to learn could save your life, or at least a few $100. Let's count down the 25 smartest shelter tricks the gear industry hopes you forget. Number 25. The Tarp A-frame Ridgeline. Before ultralight tents with their carbon poles and color-coded stakes, there was a single length of paracord tied between two trees and a cheap poly tarp thrown over the top. Your grandfather could pitch this in under 3 minutes. He'd run the cord tight at chest height, drape the tarp so both sides angled down like a tent, then stake the corners out with sharpened sticks. The trick most people miss? Tie the ridgeline with a taut line hitch so you can tension it after the tarp sags in the rain. A $9 tarp and 40 feet of cord gave you a bomb-proof roof that shed water better than a $200 single-wall tent that soaks through at the seams. Trappers used this exact setup for a century. It never had a warranty because it never needed one. Number 24. The Contractor Trash Bag Bivy. A 3mm contractor bag, the heavy black kind that cost about $1 a piece, is one of the most underrated survival tools ever made. Slit a small hole in the sealed bottom corner for your face, climb in feet first, and you've got a waterproof, windproof cocoon that traps every bit of body heat. Stuff it with dry leaves or crumpled newspaper first, and you've built insulation into the walls. Hunters have crawled into these during surprise storms and walked out dry, while the guy next to them shivered in a wet mummy bag. The bag weighs almost nothing, packs to the size of a fist, and you can carry 5 for the price of 1 energy bar. Emergency bivy sacks in the store run $40 and do the same job with more marketing. Number 23. Leaf litter as a mattress. Here's the thing almost every beginner learns the hard way. The cold that kills you doesn't come from the air. It comes from the ground, sucking heat out of your body all night long. Your grandmother's generation knew this without a single lecture. Before you build anything else, you rake together a pile of dry leaves, pine needles, or grass, at least a foot thick, then compress it and lie on top. That dead air layer stops the ground from stealing your warmth. The National Outdoor Leadership School still teaches this exact method today. A $300 inflatable sleeping pad does the same job until it punctures on a root at 2 in the morning and leaves you flat on frozen dirt. A leaf pile never springs a leak. Number 22. The reflective heat wall. When you've got a fire but the heat keeps drifting off into the dark, you build a wall behind it. Stack green logs, flat rocks, or even a mound of dirt on the far side of your fire, and it throws the radiant heat back toward you like a mirror. Old-time woodsmen would sleep between the fire and a natural rock face, letting the stones soak up heat all evening and radiate it back for hours after the flames died. The physics are dead simple. Heat that would have escaped now bounces to where you're lying. A campfire alone warms one side of you. A campfire with a reflector wall warms the whole clearing. It costs nothing but 10 minutes of stacking, and it turns a small fire into the output of a big one. Number 21. The Poncho Lean-To. A military surplus poncho with grommets in every corner is a shelter, a raincoat, and a ground cloth in one. String the hood end up on a ridgeline, stake the 2 bottom corners out at an angle, and you've got an instant lean-to that blocks wind and rain from one direction. Face the open side away from the weather and toward your fire. Soldiers have relied on this for generations because it deploys in under a minute and weighs less than a pound. A surplus poncho costs about $15. The boutique version with a fancy logo runs $80 and performs no better. When the storm hits, nobody at camp cares what brand is keeping them dry. Number 20. The Debris Hut. This is the shelter that has saved more lost hikers than any tent ever sold. You lean one long ridge pole against a stump or low branch, prop shorter sticks along both sides like ribs on a fish, then pile on leaves, bark, moss, and forest duff, at least 2 feet thick all over. The finished hut looks like a giant compost pile, and that's exactly why it works. All that debris is trapped dead air, the same principle as a sleeping bag, only free and endless. Survival instructors clock these at holding 40 degrees of warmth above outside temperature with no fire at all. It takes a couple hours to build properly, but it has carried people through nights that would have been fatal in store-bought gear. First pattern break. Here's where it gets interesting. Number 19. The fallen log lean-to. Nature builds half your shelter before you even arrive. A large fallen tree, a downed log, or a boulder with an overhang gives you an instant back wall and half a roof. Your grandfather would find one of these, lean branches against the high side to make a sloped roof, then thatch it with evergreen boughs and debris. The genius is that you're only building half a structure. The earth and the deadfall do the rest. Frontiersmen crossing the Rockies rarely carried tents. They read the land, found the natural windbreak, and let the terrain do the heavy lifting. Modern campers haul a 50-pound pack past a dozen perfect natural shelters without ever seeing them. The land is full of free rooms if you know how to look. Number 18. The scrape trench. On an open, windswept night with no trees, you don't need to stand there and take it. You dig. A shallow trench just longer than your body and a foot deep drops you below the wind line, where the air is calm and several degrees warmer. Pile the excavated dirt on the windward edge to build a low berm, line the bottom with leaves or a bag, and you've got a shelter carved out of nothing. Desert travelers and Arctic soldiers both use versions of this because wind, not cold air, is what strips your body heat fastest. A 20-minute dig with a stick or a boot heel beats shivering upright all night against a breeze that a tent would flap and rattle in anyway. Number 17. Pine bough bedding. There's a reason the phrase sleeping on a bed of pine sounds cozy. Layer overlapping evergreen boughs shingle style, tips pointing down and toward your feet, and you build a springy, insulating mattress that lifts you off the cold ground and smells like Christmas. Loggers and trappers slept on these for months at a time. The needles trap air, the branches provide loft, and unlike a foam pad, you can rebuild it thicker anytime you're cold. A single armful of boughs replaces a bulky sleeping pad you paid a week's grocery money for. Use fallen or trimmed limbs where you're allowed, and you've got the most comfortable free mattress in the forest. Number 16. The space blanket reflector. That crinkly silver emergency blanket that costs $2 and packs smaller than a phone is a heat mirror. Hung on the inside wall of your lean-to facing your body, it bounces your own radiant warmth back at you instead of letting it escape into the night. Hung behind your fire, it doubles as a reflector wall. Search and rescue teams stuff these in every kit because a single sheet can raise the temperature inside a small shelter by 10 degrees or more. The mistake people make is wrapping it directly around themselves, which just makes you sweat. Face it toward you from a few inches away and let it do its job. $2 of foil outperforms a lot of what's hanging on the pro shop wall. Number 15, the wattle wall. When you need a real wall and you've got time, you weave one. Drive a row of stakes into the ground, then weave flexible green branches or vines horizontally between them, over and under, like a basket. The result is a solid windbreak you can pack with mud, moss, or leaves to seal the gaps. This is how humans built shelter walls for thousands of years before lumberyards existed. Homesteaders used wattle fencing for everything from animal pens to cabin walls. It cost nothing but sweat, and a well-built wattle wall will stand up to wind that would collapse a flimsy pop-up tent. The materials regrow every spring, right where you're standing. Number 14, the super shelter. Now here's the one that got quietly left out of the manuals. Take a debris lean-to, then stretch a sheet of clear painter's plastic across the open front, leaving a gap at the bottom, and build a small fire just outside. The clear plastic lets in radiant heat like a greenhouse while trapping it inside, and the shelter warms up to shirt sleeve temperature, even in freezing weather. Bushcraft legends have slept in these, in sub-zero cold, wearing almost nothing. It's so effective, it almost feels like cheating. A roll of 4mm plastic sheeting costs about $10 at the hardware store and shelters you for a dozen trips. The reason you rarely see it demonstrated? It makes the four-season tent on the display rack look like a very expensive bag of nylon. Number 13. Newspaper insulation. During the Depression, men who slept rough called newspaper the Hoover blanket, and there was nothing funny about how well it worked. Crumpled newspaper stuffed between two layers of clothing, packed into a trash bag bivvy, or layered under your body traps air, just like down does. A few sheets tucked into your jacket can be the difference between shivering and sleeping. It's the same reason movers wrap dishes in it. Paper is a shockingly good insulator when it's crumpled loose, and it's everywhere for free. Modern hikers pay $200 for a puffy jacket rated to 20 degrees, never realizing the guys riding the rails in 1932 stayed alive on yesterday's headlines. Old knowledge, zero cost, still works. Second pattern break. Controversy incoming. Number 12. The hot rock bed. This one predates every heated sleeping pad on the market by about 10,000 years. You heat several fist-sized rocks near your fire, never river rocks that can explode. Wrap them in cloth or bury them a few inches under your bedding and lie down on top. Those stones radiate stored heat for hours, warming you from below where you need it most. Native peoples and pioneers used this trick across the continent to survive brutal nights. Here's the part the gear industry glosses over. A rechargeable heated pad needs a battery, a charger, and a warm outlet somewhere, none of which exist in the backcountry. A hot rock needs a fire and 30 seconds. It never runs out of charge, and it costs exactly nothing. Number 11. The A-frame ridgepole hut. Take the Tarp A-frame and make it permanent with wood. Set a long, sturdy ridgepole between two forked stakes, lean branches against both sides to form the frame, then thatch the whole thing with bark slabs, boughs, and debris. What you get is a solid, rain-shedding tent made entirely of the forest floor. Mountain men called these their winter camps and lived in them for entire trapping seasons. The steeper you pitch the sides, the better they shed rain and snow. It takes an afternoon to build one right, but once it's up, it stands through storms that would flatten a lightweight backpacking tent and leave you holding a pile of broken poles. Number 10. The mud-packed wall. When wind is howling through the gaps in your shelter, you seal them the way people have for millennia. Wet dirt, worked into a thick mud and smeared into every crack of a wattle or stick wall, dries into a windproof, insulating skin. Add dry grass to the mud, and it binds harder and cracks less, the ancient recipe called daub. A mud-sealed wall blocks wind completely and holds heat like a cabin. It's messy, it's cold on the hands, and it works better than any zippered vestibule. Adobe homes in the Southwest have stood for centuries on this exact principle. The earth under your feet is free building material, and it never needs to be shipped, seam-sealed, or replaced. Number 9. The snow trench. Counterintuitive as it sounds, snow is one of the best insulators in nature, and in deep cold, it can save your life. Dig a trench into a firm snowbank, roof it with branches and a tarp or blocks of packed snow, and crawl inside. The snow walls block wind completely and hold the interior far warmer than the open air, often near freezing, even when it's brutally cold outside. Arctic travelers and mountaineers have survived nights this way that no tent could handle. The still air inside, sheltered from wind and warmed by your own body, is what keeps you alive. It costs nothing but the shovel work, and the raw material falls from the sky. Number 8. The elevated platform. In wet, swampy, or bug-infested ground, you don't sleep on the earth, you build up. A simple frame of logs lashed together, raised on rocks or forked stakes, and topped with a lattice of branches and boughs, lifts you off the cold, damp, crawling ground entirely. Jungle troops and swamp trappers relied on these because sleeping in the muck means sleeping wet, and wet means cold. The platform keeps you dry, keeps the bugs at bay, and lets cool air pass beneath you in the heat. It's the free version of a cot that costs $60 and still puts your weight an inch off the ground. Cordage from vines or roots holds the whole thing together for nothing. Third pattern break. This one changed everything. Number 7. The candle and flower pot heater. In a small sealed shelter, a single candle throws off more usable heat than people expect, and there's a trick to concentrate it. Set a couple of tea lights under an inverted clay flower pot, and the pot absorbs the flame's heat and radiates it slowly and steadily into the space. In a tight lean-to or a car, this can take the edge off a freezing night. Now the honest part, because safety matters. This only works in a ventilated space, never a fully sealed one, since any flame burns oxygen. Used with airflow, it's a heat source that costs pennies. The propane heaters in the catalog run $60 and burn through fuel canisters you have to keep buying. A candle costs $0.25 and burns for hours. Number 6. The natural cordage weave. Paracord is great until you run out. Then you make your own. The inner bark of trees like basswood, cedar, and dogwood, or long grasses and nettle stalks, can be twisted into ropes strong enough to lash a whole shelter together. You strip the fibers, roll them against your thigh in 2 strands, and reverse wrap them into a cord that holds real weight. Indigenous builders framed entire lodges with cordage made this way. It's slow, it's a skill, and once you have it, you're never truly without rope again. The forest is full of it. Meanwhile, the store sells you a bracelet of the stuff for $20 and calls it survival gear, when the strongest rope you'll ever use is growing on the tree beside you. Number 5. The double lean-to. Instead of one lean-to open to the weather, you build 2 facing each other with a gap in the middle, and you light your fire in that gap. Both sloped roofs reflect the fire's heat inward, and both bodies of shelter trap it. This was the classic long camp of woodsmen wintering in the north, sometimes big enough for a whole party. The fire in the center warms 2 shelters at once, and the twin roofs bounce heat back and forth like a furnace. It's more work than a single wall, but on the coldest nights, it's the difference between enduring and resting. No tent on the market heats 2 rooms off one small fire. This one has for 200 years. Number 4. The bark shingle roof. Slabs of bark peeled from fallen logs, cedar and birch especially, make natural shingles that shed rain as well as anything you can buy. Overlap them from the bottom up like roof tiles, weigh them down with poles, and water runs right off. Pioneers roofed their first cabins this way before they had time to split proper shakes. Birch bark in particular is naturally waterproof and was used for everything from canoes to roofing. A bark roof over a stick frame keeps you bone dry through a downpour that would find every seam in a cheap tent. It costs nothing, it blends into the woods, and the trees that shed it are lying on the ground already, asking to be used. 4th pattern break, the one they don't advertise. Number 3. The tarp and reflective liner combo. Here's the trick that makes flagship tents look ridiculous. Pitch a simple tarp shelter, then line the inside with a cheap space blanket, silver side facing in, and add a debris-insulated floor. What you've built for under $15 total is a shelter that reflects your body heat, blocks all wind and rain, and insulates you from the ground, the 3 things that actually keep a person alive. Survival instructors will tell you flat out that these 3 principles matter more than any brand name. A premium 4-season tent addresses maybe 2 of them and charges you $500 for the privilege. The trapper's combo of a tarp, some foil, and a pile of leaves does all 3. The gear companies know it. That's why they sell you nylon and hope you never learn the leaves are free. Number 2, the snowblock wall windbreak. On an exposed winter ridge, you don't need a full shelter to survive. You need to stop the wind. Cut blocks of packed snow with a saw or a flat stick and stack them into a low-curved wall on the windward side of your camp. Behind it, the air goes dead calm and the temperature climbs. Polar explorers have used snow block walls for over a century because wind chill, not raw cold, is the real killer. A half hour of cutting and stacking builds a barrier that turns a howling, deadly ridge into a survivable camp. No tent fabric flaps, no poles snap in the gusts. The wall just stands there, silent and solid, doing the one job that matters most when the wind is trying to kill you. And finally, number 1, the dugout bank shelter, the oldest and warmest of them all. Find a hillside or a bank, dig into it, and roof the excavation over with logs, branches, and a thick layer of sod and earth. What you've made is half cave, half cabin, insulated on every side by the ground itself, which holds a steady temperature no matter what the weather does above. Homesteaders on the treeless plains lived in dugouts and sod houses through winters that killed livestock in the open, warm inside with nothing but a small fire. The earth is the best insulation there is, free, endless, and everywhere. A dugout takes real work to build, but once it's finished, it outperforms every shelter on this list and every tent in every store. It's the reason the pioneers survived where modern gear would have failed. The ground kept them alive. So here's my challenge. Pick one of these and actually try it this weekend. The Tarp A-frame, the leaf litter mattress, the reflector wall, the contractor bag bivvy. Just one. Then come back and tell me if I'm wrong, because I've tested these and I can't look at a $400 tent the same way anymore. Drop a comment and tell me which trick you're trying first. Your great-grandfather knew all of these by heart. Now you do too.